All right, welcome to another episode of Private Practice Practically. We have a very special guest today, Rachel Coster. Rachel, how are you doing today?
So good. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. For people that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do, please?
Yeah, for sure. So, I am a licensed social worker and somatic therapist, and I have been practicing north of 10, 11 years at this point. Started my career in community mental health that really set me up with a great clinical foundation. And now I'm operating in my private practice called Hungry Heart. That is all about identifying and meeting unmet needs and how that can show up. Unmet needs show up in day to day life, and how we can kind of approach that as more human as opposed to this pathology that we see so often in mental health fields.
Wow, that is really, really cool. What motivated you to become a therapist in the first place?
Yeah, great question. This is always an interesting answer for me because I think my journey to become a therapist has a lot to do with how I practice now, which that's true for a lot of providers as well. When I was a teenager, I used to watch a lot of intervention. So I'm kind of dating myself here. This was, if you're familiar, it's this show that would approach people struggling with substance use disorders and stage an intervention. And I always thought it was really interesting how it would show like people really struggling, finding help, and kind of getting access. Now, at this point, I understand that intervention in that way is definitely not best practice for treating substance use disorders, but ultimately that was kind of how I got interested in it, was starting to really watch that as a teenager and look into pursuing studying social work throughout high school and undergrad as well. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting lead in because I'm like, I definitely don't support interventions at this point, but that's how I got into it ultimately.
Wow. So you mentioned having a private practice.
Mhm.
How long into your career were you kind of like doing the group work maybe, or working as a clinician at another practice before you opened up your own?
Yeah, for sure. So I was working in community mental health, I want to say 9, 10 years. My practice is fairly new. It's only 2 years old. So I had a short period of overlap between them, and then found that I didn't really want to become a supervisor in the position that I was at, even though I really loved it. So I didn't really have opportunities to grow in the way that I wanted at that agency. So, starting full time in my practice, I've had more time to myself to be able to figure out what it is that I want, not only personally, but professionally, and how I want to operate my own business, which has been really rewarding.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And I mean, the fact that you have 8, 10 years experience before starting your private practice, I mean, that kind of, I want to say, help you build a really solid foundation as far as like your clinical skills so that you could be effective as a
Yeah.
practice owner. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I fear people that come out of school and start private practices because there's so much. I felt
Mhm.
like when I graduated, I was beginning my education clinically. So I learned so much under my amazing supervisor, and so many different clinical cases. Community mental health, if you're familiar with that at all, you're serving everyone. So there's experiences with different presentations, different behaviors that has really helped me be able to triage when I get different consults and assessing level of care for people. So that's been a great foundation to stand on for sure.
Rachel, so what would you say your niche is?
Yeah, great question. So, my niche, I think primarily, if I look at my caseload, all mostly serve women who are burnt out, perfectionist, kind of really struggling with that sense of not feeling good enough after trying so hard, pouring everything that they can into their day to day. But the more that I have practiced as a somatic therapist, More broadly, my niche would be serving people who know in their brains what they need and want to do, but don't understand why they can't execute it.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. So many threads there that I like to kind of pull on a little bit. But let me kind of back up to somatic, the
Mhm.
somatic work. For somebody that has never heard of that, or maybe they've come across that term casually, but they don't really know what that means. Can you kind of explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, somatic therapy, it can often be confused. People think, oh, somatics, we're thinking body work, right? So, what might come to mind is a massage therapist or acupuncture, which certainly is body work, right? But when we're talking somatics, we're as opposed to addressing the body directly, we're working with the body. So, somatic therapy is all about integration. So, often knowing something in your mind intellectually, but it feels hard to apply. Like, I don't know, an example like, I know I shouldn't take it personally, but it feels personal. Or I
Mm.
know they said they're not mad, but something feels off, right? So,
Wow.
somatic therapy is all about closing the gap between what your brain knows intellectually and what your body is responding to.
I mean, I've just one small example of as you were saying that stood out to me in my own experience was I just have clients or have had clients that have they know they should say no, for example, like this doesn't work, like setting some kind of boundary, and then they can't when they're in the moment in live with the person, and then they leave the situation just thinking to themselves like, why did I do that, like I knew better, I've done practiced this so many times, right? And then they don't do it. Wow, that's so interesting, Rachel. So why does that happen? Like can you kind of give us like a kind of quick rundown if you can about how is it that we can understand cognitively what we should be doing,
Yeah.
but then it doesn't translate into actual action?
Yeah, absolutely. I got to kind of hone in on how I want to answer that because there's so many layers here.
Mhm.
Um, so, what I would say is that humans, we are hardwired for survival and not necessarily ease, peace, joy, connection. So, in order to make the changes that we would like to make and feel the way that we want to feel, we have to look first at what our nervous systems are doing automatically to help us out. So, we have these amazing automatic systems, but they promise to keep us safe. They do not promise to keep us comfortable. So these things will happen. I learn along the way, oh, I need to be hyper aware of how people are feeling around me to be okay myself, right? So I might automatically create this pattern to keep me safe. And then ultimately, I might end up in talk therapy in my 30s or 40s. And my therapist tells me, yeah, how can we give you some breathing strategies so you can stop doing that? And it feels impossible. It's even more frustrating because that vigilance about how people are feeling around you, for example, is serving you. And you aren't
Mm.
ready to let that go and make a change and say no, for example, until we understand how to meet that need. How do I meet the need before I make the change of behavior?
I wonder if okay, let me back up. So it sounds like the body creates this thing and the function of that thing is to protect us.
Yes.
And that very thing can kind of hold us back from living like a happy, meaningful, fulfilling life. Is that kind of
Yeah.
a very layman's terms of or summary of yeah, that's super, super interesting. Rachel, I wonder, when does this show up the most for your clients? Like, does it happen at particular life stages? Does it go all the way back to childhood? Like, when have you noticed a trend in how that shows up?
Yeah, I think that these patterns, many of them kind of establish themselves in childhood, but not exclusively. I
Hmm.
think that generally people might be drawn into treatment when they cross a certain level of awareness and frustration with the patterns. Because oftentimes, we might need these things. You're growing through college, for example, right? And you're the yes man to anyone. Yeah, of course, I'll help you out. Yeah, I'll go to this meeting. Yeah, sure, I'll make cookies for the entire, cohort, whatever that is, right? So those things are very helpful. And then we get to a certain point where we're like, oh my God, I'm making all these cookies for my entire class and I don't have any time to spend, with my kids, or, I feel like I have no energy at the end of the day to, do the things that I like or connect with my partner, for example. So we get to that threshold where we realize, why don't I have energy for the things that I actually want to do? And then that's what kind of opens the door into treatment, is like, I don't understand why I'm so exhausted, right?
Yeah.
Because this pattern is just running in the background.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like a high functioning person can really experience a lot of this. Do you see high functioning clients that are kind of dealing with some of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. I would describe many of my clients in patterns of over functioning and under functioning. So what that means is, during the day, you're go, 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 yes, 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 get everything done, hypervigilance with the to-do list, making sure we're checking everything off. And then when you get home, you're staring at the ceiling, you're staring at your phone, maybe you're in front of the TV and your phone, or feeling disconnected from yourself and other people in your home. So that's a big part of what I do, is working with people that have all of these strategies. They're like, objectively, my life is going really well. I don't know why I feel horrible and miserable.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. What do you think is missing, Rachel, between like knowing and then like, is it skills maybe? Is it insight? Like what is kind of like that missing link?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the times with the people that I see, and I won't say 100% of the time, but oftentimes we have awareness and insight. And that's part of the frustration, is I know I keep doing this, or like, I know that I need to say no, with your example, right? But there's the kind of missing link about how do I stop and how do I make a change? So simply put, I would say that missing link is curiosity, right? We oftentimes approach ourselves kind of as a bully, right? We say like, yeah, I want to feel better. I have an image of what I want to feel, how I want my life to look, but we kind of approach ourselves aggressively, like, oh, I just wish I could be different, or like, I don't know, I wish I could stop being so negative, for example, right? Like, we kind of give ourselves these prescriptions of action steps, but they're nebulous, they're ambiguous. And they threaten the patterns that are there to protect us. And it's hard to see. It's like, I have these conversations all day where people come in and they're like, so you're saying that biting my nails down to the nubs is helping me? What do you mean? That's crazy, right? Like, there's this, like, objectively, you're like, how does this thing that looks like it's hurting me, feels like it's hurting me, how is that helpful?
Yeah.
And that's a great question. And that's what I do, is start to get curious about that, start to understand, okay, is it the nail biting that is the helpful part? Or is the nail biting the solution to some other need, for example?
And do you think that as you work with your clients, and they progress in therapy with you, do they start to become curious about their own behaviors and thoughts and things like that? Like, do they start kind of adopting some of that curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really amazing to watch people shift from that kind of aggressive, bully like energy that is really natural, right? If we want to make a change, or I know, I don't know why I'm using nail biting as my example, but right, if I know, like, I'm biting my nails down to the nubs, right? Like, I'm like, I want to change. Like, of course we have an urgency behind that. and we would approach it in the way that we do in the capitalist society, which is like, I'm going to buy a workbook, or I'm going to try breathing exercises, and kind of rely on one tool to make that change. And that's just ultimately doesn't meet the needs of our nervous systems.
Yeah, definitely. I like to switch gears a little bit, Rachel, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I know that the world of therapy is massive, right? So many things to kind of specialize in. Like you said, so many classes we can take and subspecialties, all the things, right? How did you get into somatic work?
Yeah, great question. I'm trying to think back. So I was first trained in EMDR in 2019. And I'm trying to remember back into what first inspired me to do that. So let me take a moment to reflect. I feel like COVID was such a time warp. I'm thinking back to 2019. So okay, so at the time I was running a skills program, which was primarily focused on coping. Okay, you have anxiety. How can you, use strategies to cope during the day? And as a therapist, I'm a therapist that believes in therapy. So I had started my own journey in therapy and found that skills work was not meeting my needs, was not exactly what I needed. So I had personally tried EMDR. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. This is really helpful. I did in 6 sessions what I couldn't have done in months of working with a traditional provider. That's not to say that EMDR is for everyone or somatic therapy is for everyone. That was kind of a personal experience with it. So I was able to get trained, and I've really been a believer ever since that, for people that experience that awareness of like, I have this high level of information and knowledge about myself, but I don't know how to apply it to my body.
Yeah, what an interesting journey to go through EMDR yourself and then just kind of
Mhm.
realize that it didn't quite work for you, and then trying something different. And I think
Yeah.
that's really cool because it seems like EMDR is everywhere. I have seen somatic work, the term kind of out there. I don't want to say commonly, but it seems like it's very popular right now.
Mhm.
What are there any myths that people may believe, or maybe any misunderstandings that a potential client may have about somatic work?
Yeah, I think the most common that I experience or hear about is that you kind of can go right in to processing. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it leads with eye movement. So you think, okay, great, I'm going to start my session with eye movements. And that is absolutely not the case. If you are operating with a provider who is starting with processing, I would highly recommend finding a different provider. There are 8 different stages of EMDR that walk through preparation to get to the point where it is establishing enough safety to walk into processing. So that's definitely the biggest thing that I encounter is I'll start working with someone. We're establishing that safety, laying down the groundwork and the plan. And people are like, when are we going to start the eye movements? And it's like, we have to be strategic in order to prevent inadvertently threatening your system.
Oh,
I'm finding that I want to speak more about that, and then I realize that I'm already being long-winded.
no. This is really great, Rachel, because these are really common questions, I think, and misunderstandings. And it's so interesting that you say that because I have experienced being the fly on the wall, so to speak, and seeing a clinician kind of apply EMDR, and I have seen clients that are kind of eager. Like, come on, do this on me, like, let's go. I want to do the thing that I'm seeing a lot about on social media and other places, and so it's really interesting that as a clinician, you kind of have to navigate that and be like, hey, there's a way to properly do this, to be strategic about not maybe triggering or exacerbating any presenting problems. Why is that important? The need to just kind of slow down and assess first.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to get a clear picture of A, what you're treating, what the goal is, right? So we talked about some of the people pleasing, saying yes, nail biting, whatever those things are. You want to be clear about what that goal is. And you also want to have an understanding of the nervous system. So essentially, what that means is where are those protective strategies? What do they look like? What do we call them? I sometimes think about them as like soldiers, right? So if they're kind of standing outside the castle with their swords, and we come up with a battering ram or a knife, and we're like, get out of the way, we're coming in. It's like you're going to initiate a war. They're going to double down, pull out the sword to fight you, as opposed to approaching with curiosity, like we were saying, taking that more slowly. Oh, hey, I wonder what's in this castle. Hey, what's this soldier doing out here? What's going on? Like getting more of a clear picture before we start to batter down the door. We want to ask permission. Yeah. Can we come in?
Yeah, that's interesting. So going back to that example of the nail biting, if we were trying to go straight to with the battering ram straight to the gate, what would happen potentially? Would they maybe like bite even more? Like would that compulsion maybe strengthen? Would it increase?
Yeah.
I guess my question is like, what is the risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was just in consultation about this, actually. One of the clinicians is providing couples therapy for a couple, one of which is in EMDR treatment. And they started to notice that this person's substance use was increasing. And immediately I was like, hey, check in with the individual provider about the EMDR process, make sure that we are following protocol. Because if symptoms are getting worse, something's going awry with EMDR. So you might see increasing nail biting, or other kind of compulsive behaviors because the system's trying to protect, fill in. Whoa, don't go over there. Look at this. And there's kind of this smoke screen that can happen to throw off treatment and protect the system ultimately. So we really want to be cautious there, despite people that feel really ready. No, I'm ready to talk about it, or I'm ready to process. And it's like, I get that. Like that may be true for you as a person, but ultimately we have to trust and listen to your nervous system.
Wow. Yeah, that is so interesting because it's like earlier we were talking about the clients being eager to discuss it and but at the same time it's like we're working with the person and the nervous system, and those two can kind of conflict, right? Like one's like let's go, and the other one is like we don't even know what's going on, so we got to take it really slow. That is so interesting. And it sounds like as a clinician, one really needs to be very careful and get feedback from the clients and do, regular check-ins to kind of figure out if any of these things are getting worse. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're following the EMDR protocol, you're not even going to be in a position necessarily where that would happen. I'm not going to say 100% of the time, because of course there are things that can't be expected that pop up. But part of the preparation for processing is practicing, touching on something that feels intense, coming back to safety, noticing how that feels. Does that feel easy? What are the barriers to doing that? So that you have that tool and you have that skill when you do start processing, that you're not just walking someone into distress and being like, good luck, see you next week, which I think can happen in other modalities, because we often miss the difference between reprocessing and re-traumatizing. Where if you just come in and I'm like, Rich, tell me the worst things that have ever happened to you, which I will say, I used to do assessments like that because that's how you learn. First session, do a biopsychosocial. Like that is not trauma informed. That is not attuned to the nervous system to meet someone and then be asking them about trauma.
Yeah.
So certainly reprocessing in a certain way where we're not just walking you verbally into the story and saying,
Mm.
wow, that sounds really hard. See you on Monday, right? Where that kind of isn't, I would say that's the opposite of somatic therapy.
Yeah, yeah, wow. And as you were saying that, I had this I was thinking of this idea in like the weightlifting kind of workout world, which is like progressive overload, right? Like you do a little bit more and then you come back, you rest, you recover, you do a little bit more, and then you
Yeah.
slowly build up your strength. It sounds like it's a kind of similar process of just kind of progressively loading, so to speak, a little bit of that,
Mhm.
nervous system and whatever that entails, and then coming back to safety. When you bring a client back to safety or whenever they return to safety, what does kind of like that processing look like? Is that like a week, 2 week long? Is it like a quick 10-15 minute thing and then you go back? Like, what does that kind of treatment look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have clients that some people do weekly 50-minute sessions. That's more traditional therapeutic hour. And I do have some people that do longer sessions. So I offer EMDR intensives. So people might opt for longer sessions less frequently. So that can accelerate treatment because we have more time, right? So instead of wasting that time and like, oh, how was the week? Oh, good to see you, right? And wrapping up each time. We might have 90 minutes or 2 hours to be able to get into it, do more of that practice with creating safety in the nervous system, practicing touching on distress, coming back. And depending on how the system has downloaded strategies, that sometimes goes quicker than others, but it kind of depends on how much support someone has had, what their experiences have been walking into treatment.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like it's very individualized.
Hmm.
Um, Rachel, yeah, that's super fascinating. This world of like somatic therapy. I'd like to kind of switch gears a little bit and ask about your clients. What's kind of the feedback been from them who've gone through their journey with somatic therapy with you? What do they say about it?
Hmm. Yeah. So, kind of by nature of trauma or extremely stressful experiences and survival, is that the point is that it disconnects you from your body. So the whole strategy is how do we get her away from her body, right? So that we don't feel this or we can't experience this or we don't get this information. So when people come into somatic therapy and start to build that bridge, start to build that relationship with their body and can receive a wider range of messages about their needs, it's life changing for a lot of people, because we make friends with that frustration of like, oh, I don't understand. I don't know why I don't drink water during the day, or I don't understand why hours go by, I forget to eat, right? With some of those like more basic needs, right? When you have that relationship with your body, you can feel more present. It's more comfortable to feel calm, feel connected, feel that peace and ease, which can be, that's the whole carrot, right? That's kind of the bit of why people are coming in. So it's really rewarding to watch that transformation.
Yeah, that's really cool. In your practice and doing somatic work, Rachel, do you actually do like body things? Like, are you kind of getting the clients to like engage their body and like do breathing, and are they like grabbing things, and you know what I mean? Is there some of that involved?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think I had said earlier that somatic therapy is about working with the body
Yeah.
and less about on the body. So there are few in some cases, if you're working in person, the clinician might be offering bilateral stimulation with tapping to the client. But it is mostly working with. So yeah, we absolutely incorporate movement. Um, I realized I mentioned bilateral stimulation. I didn't explain that. So bilateral stimulation is any kind of like touch on both sides of the body. So this is a really common one, is the
Mm,
butterfly hug.
mm,
And you just alternate tapping, and that
mm.
can be a really useful somatic technique for both resourcing, creating that safety, And also when we play around with speeds, we also use that for processing.
Oh, so if you go faster, is that kind of a little bit more advanced, so to speak, with
Yes.
the tapping? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's one of the strategies when I use that. I mean, depending on what you're working with, you'd be using resourcing speed or processing speed. But ultimately, as people move through, when you finish a round of tapping, you might notice, oh, my legs are tingling, or oh, I feel, tension in my neck, for example. So I absolutely encourage people to, move around, maybe shake your legs out, do one of these, jump around, and kind of allow that physical experience to move through the body.
Wow, Rachel, why does that happen? Like if you're doing the butterfly and you're tapping, and then why do they feel tension in like the traps or tingling legs? Like what is that about? Is that like the body releasing something?
Yeah, so that happens more during processing, is that you
Mm,
might notice new sensations when you're doing it a little bit faster. So
gotcha.
the whole idea behind bilateral stimulation is that we have two sides of our brain. So you have the right side where our little amygdala sits behind the ear. This is where all of our emotion is at. So when we get really flooded, oh my gosh, I'm really frustrated, or I'm really angry, or really sad, and we feel like I could never feel a different way, right? That's when our amygdala kind of floods our brain. The left side over here is our chillin, logic, safety, relaxed side. That doesn't have the same kind of network for emotion. So when we tap, because our brain is connected right side to left side to right, it allows the brain to connect to the other side. Um, so we're able to provide some of that soothing to the right side and kind of bring us from this high level of agitation to a lower level of agitation.
Oh, gotcha. So it sounds like in a way, the client can activate a different part of the brain that maybe is a little underactive. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think that's a good
That
way of
wasn't
putting
right.
it. Yeah.
Rachel's like, no.
No, no, no. I think you're spot on, right? So when our amygdala like fires up, it's telling us something. Ah, threat,
Mhm,
alert,
mhm.
alert, right? Something's happening. I almost imagine it sometimes like a smoke alarm, right? So if
Oh,
the
gotcha.
smoke alarm is going off, most commonly we if it went off right now, we would know that's the smoke alarm. I either need to check for a fire or hit the reset button.
Got it.
Oftentimes when we have this disconnection with our body, we hear the alarm, but we don't know it's a smoke alarm. We're like, is it the timer on the oven? Is
Mm.
it the filter on the fridge? Is it the alarm outside? We don't know where to go, so we just end up in this panicky mode without understanding how to like turn it off.
Rachel, is this something that a client can do on their own after they've kind of walked it through with their clinician a few times, or is it strictly only for the therapy office?
Yeah. So processing is strictly for the therapy space. Resourcing is not. So resourcing is something that I will review with clients to as a tool to use on their own. So we may create a some kind of positive engaging image, like I'm tapping while I'm thinking about petting my dog, for example, right?
Mm.
So I might cue sensations of petting your dog. What does it smell like? What does it feel like? And then over the next week or so, using that tapping to strengthen that network, to strengthen that pathway to, oh, yeah, I feel really grounded when I'm petting my dog, for example.
Wow. Yeah. So it's like clients that work with you and they do the somatic work, they learn the skill, so to speak, to be able to practice on their own at home.
Yes.
And then when they come and see you, then they kind of do a little bit of that more offensive, going to the castle gate kind of work. It just
Yes.
stuck with me. Yeah. Great,
Yes.
Rachel. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
exactly right, and I
That is,
generally encourage people to, practice when they don't feel like they need it. That's a really important part because oftentimes when we teach skills, we're like, "The next time you feel overwhelmed, try this breath work." But just like we were talking about with the amygdala, especially something we're practicing for the first time, you are not going to remember. You're not going to be in the heat of the moment. Oh, let me reach for my coloring book. No, you need to practice that before you're in the moment so that you have that back pocket when you need it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And the way I think about that as you were explaining it is like learning how to catch a ball during a baseball game. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to learn how to catch during the game, right? Like you got to practice before you go play the game. And it sounds like the same principle applies. Like the clients, even though they may feel like they don't need it, it's still good practice to do it. What is that kind of, is there like a standard protocol of practice, Rachel, that the clients kind of are encouraged to do? Like, is it like 10 minutes a day, or is it all dependent on their case?
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, since we are more nervous system led, I offer the option, hey, try it once between now and the next time I see you, see how that goes. Right. And it doesn't have to be 10 minutes. It could be 10 rounds. I'm just tapping 10 times, seeing what you notice there.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that can be really rich content, is like, I found that it was really hard to remember to try to practice that. Or actually, I tried the tapping in the shower and that was really useful. So I tried it the next day, right? Like there's a lot of information in just cueing the practice. So I find that it's not exact by any means. It's mostly what the client has capacity to do.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. For the clients that don't practice it, is there like maybe like a trend that you've seen in your work so far that kind of suggests a reason why they may not be practicing?
Well, yeah, I think that it's the nature of the work, right? So when we are working with people that have the intellectual knowledge of what they need to do, but have trouble integrating it, asking anyone to practice something for the first time is asking them to do exactly that, right?
Mm.
It's like, hey, do this thing that, I'm introducing for you. And of course, that can be really hard when that's the reason that you're in treatment, is to address that. So I certainly have a lot of compassion for the moments when that doesn't feel possible. And for people that find like, all right, I feel really dysregulated, overwhelmed outside of session, we just practice during the session. Let's start with that, or let's end with that, and then allow that to be that touch point for practice. But eventually people will trend toward, oh, I'm pairing it with when I'm waiting for my drip coffee, for example, right? Where you kind of pair it with something that you're already doing.
Wow. Yeah, that's so I really like that, because that seems to be a very common situation or position that anybody could be in, right? Waiting for a coffee. How does one do it? Are they doing the butterfly hug, or are they doing something a little bit more low key if they're standing in line at, say, a Starbucks or something?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. The butterfly hug, I do it because if I'm virtual, this is what you can see. This is
Okay.
like the classic kind of EMDR bona fide butterfly hug for
Mm.
tapping. If I'm doing that, especially if I'm laying down, it makes me feel like a corpse. So there's a bunch of different ways.
All right.
You can cross your arms and do the taps on your rib
Okay.
cage, which can be a cool kind of casual chill
Yeah.
in if you are in line at Starbucks, for example, using the hands on the sides or the tops of the thighs if you're
Mhm.
seated or waiting in line, kind of doing
Mhm.
bup, 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 or even the feet. So using the heels alternating or the balls of the feet can also be kind of a casual way to practice as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool that there are a lot of options available for the clients. Yeah, that's really really cool. Rachel, I wonder if there's maybe a success story that you've experienced with the client that you're willing to share, maybe that surprised even you, as far as like how they progressed or progressed, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm not going to get specific with a certain case, but I think that some of the most profound work that I've done is working with both athletes and people with chronic illness. So people that come in that have a certain goal related to their sport, right? Like I have all the lessons, I have all of the equipment, and I get in my head, when I'm behind the plate or, behind the club, for example, right, that are able to address and integrate those mental blocks and their nervous systems, as well as people that have very physical symptoms like IBS, for example, chronic pain, that pair somatic therapy with other modalities and are able to experience a significant decrease in their symptoms.
Wait a minute, Rachel. So you work with athletes who are trying to kind of improve and optimize their performance.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you're also working with individuals who are just trying to get back to baseline because of a medical issue that they have going on. That is really cool that your work can kind of reach a lot of individuals. Especially when you said IBS, it's just kind of mind blowing that something like that, can really be helped by your somatic work, coupled with other modalities. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of athletes and people kind of experiencing medical issues?
Yeah, I do. I find that many of the people that come to me are people that have not experienced success or felt really stuck with other types of modalities. And that doesn't mean that one is better than the other. I think depending on where you are at in your course of treatment, building a skills foundation or flushing through something that feels stressful is useful in different seasons. But I notice as people are turning to somatic therapy, they're like, I've tried these other things. They didn't work. I'm really looking to feel more connected, start to get more answers. And that's what kind of brings them in the door to trying something like EMDR or IFS.
Now, Rachel, I'm starting to get the impression that somatic work is kind of like that second line, like that second effort. Is that kind of the thing? Like, should clients kind of go check out other types of therapy before they reach out to a somatic practitioner or EMDR specialist, or can they go straight to the somatic work and the EMDR? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's so much nuance here, so I can't give a straight answer. Some people find that they're looking to keep things more superficial at first if they've never been in therapy and they want to kind of understand, oh, what am I going to be doing here? If they don't have any of that intellectual knowledge we were saying about, like, I know I always people please, I wish I could stop, for example, if they're not aware of what those patterns already are, that starting with a skills program or starting with something that is more verbal can be useful. But I've seen many people come in that have never been in treatment before that are just ready to feel better, align with somatic therapy. So I always encourage people to schedule a consult, and I regard myself as kind of a community resource that I'm not looking to sell you my business. I want to make sure that you're connected to the service that's going to be most aligned for you and what you need.
Yeah, that's really cool. So it sounds like a potential client can go anywhere, right? They can pick the more traditional talk therapy. They can go to an EMDR specialist, somebody who does somatic work. They'll find someone that can help them, even if they haven't experienced therapy before.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, that's really
Absolutely.
cool. Is there something you wish that people understood before starting therapy about therapy?
There's so many things. So I'm going to try to land in something. I think the biggest thing that I will notice is coming into therapy believing that there is not only something wrong with you, but that therapy will fix it. I will often find people come in kind of amped up, like, oh, I'm sure you're hearing that, like, in a certain way, or they're kind of feeling more agitated about how I am viewing them or where they need to be from where they're at. And ultimately, healing is about that integration we're talking about, is actually noticing, oh my gosh, like that need to be vigilant about other people's emotions. For example, I don't need to fix that. I can pick that up when I need it, but also feel in control enough to put that down when I don't need it. So that's really what healing is about, as opposed to, I'm never going to people please again. It's about feeling, I can people please when I need to and not when I don't need to.
Yeah, it's like the word that sticks out to me as you were explaining that is like awareness, right?
Yeah.
Maybe having the ability to choose what's appropriate
Mm-hmm.
for them at the time. Is that a does that land?
Yeah, I think so. I think the only caveat I would say is that so many people have this high level of awareness that is almost like
Mm,
self-monitoring, and they still feel so out of control because they're like, I keep doing that thing and I noticed that, like they have this high level of awareness, but they're
yeah,
missing that integration.
got it.
So I think that it's awareness plus integration that equals that control piece, as
Got
opposed to a more like monitoring, panicky, out
it.
of control feeling.
Yeah, that's really cool, and thank you for that insight, Rachel. I think that's really helpful to hear how awareness can needs to be coupled with that connection that leads to success essentially in therapy. So I think that's really
Yeah.
cool. Um, Rachel, I like to ask about you. Is that okay?
Sure.
What's on the horizon for you? Do you have any special projects coming up? Are you looking to maybe expand your practice? What does the future hold for Rachel?
Yeah, great question. I found that I have a lot of energy this year in the year of the fire horse. So I have a lot of ideas flowing. Big part of my work when I was in community mental health was group work, and that has always really felt aligned for me and something that I want to get back into. So I have a vision for this next year to try to start a group space of some kind. And I'm workshopping that right now with some of my existing clients about identifying what those needs might be and what might be optimal for the community. And also expanding my services into the world of athletics. I work with a lot of golfers. I think there's a lot in golf about mental games. So I think that brings a lot of golfers my way. But I think it can be applicable to many different sports because, of course, that mental piece is present in all athletics. So yeah, I think that that's kind of where my gaze is heading for this next year. And starting to collaborate with more therapists as well. I'm always looking for other therapists that are kind of on a similar wavelength, getting different perspectives, active in consultation. So that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome. How did the golf community find you? Did you find them? Did it just kind of happen organically? Like how did golf become a thing?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a golfer, and I noticed on the course that there was this thing that happens where someone might hit a bad shot and say out loud, right? Like, "Oh, I suck," or like, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or something like that, and would not be able to recover. And I've experienced that myself. It's like, I'm having a bad round, right? I might tell myself this story and not be able to bring it back. You can't hit any of your clubs now because you're kind of flooded in this negative experience. So I started having conversations with golf pros and different clubs and talking about how I can collaborate as a somatic therapist with people that are taking golf lessons or feeling motivated to improve their games by kind of training their mental game. So that's kind of how I got into that. It was kind of this strange, like I just happened to be on the course and started this conversation. And as you can tell, I really love talking about it. So I think that was kind of a natural gateway into expanding into the world of athletics.
That's super cool. And it's I think even better because you are a golfer talking to other golfers,
Yeah.
so they're like, yeah, us, like you're here, on the course doing the thing, you've seen it, you've experienced it. Man, that's really, really cool, Rachel. You mentioned earlier collaborating with other therapists. What does that look like? Are you thinking like you do like virtual meetups, conferences? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's both. I have a consultation crew that I meet with a couple times a month. So I have people that I know from my school program, and also just people that I know from working in community mental health. So whether that be meeting up, hey, we get a coffee, maybe you have a combination of like, we're sharing personal things, we're also consulting about cases. So those kinds of connections are so important as a private practice owner, because it can feel isolating, right? You're not just talking to your friends or your partner, whoever, about your cases, right? So it can feel like you really need those outlets, and wanting to continue to grow my own knowledge and perspective about my cases. So that's a really big, important piece for me.
Yeah, and something you said stood out to me. You said it's really important to get better. Um, maybe maybe you didn't phrase it that way, but that's what I'm hearing, is that you stay sharp by consulting with your peers, and you're talking about the work that you do, and it kind of holds two purposes. One, just as an outlet to kind of share your experience in the therapy office with other clinicians who are also aware of like the ethical guidelines around sharing and stuff like that, right? You do it very carefully and professionally, adhering to all the ethics and stuff, but then also just collaborating with ideas, right? And I think that's the hallmark of a clinician that starts growing beyond the average. Not that I'm not, no shade on anybody, but I think that's a mindset that I see some of those more top tier clinicians have, is that I want to talk, I want to share, I want to contribute and refine my ideas and learn from others even, and so I just wanted to give you kudos, Rachel, because not that you need it or anything, but I just think that's really cool. And I think it speaks a lot, or it's connected to you as an athlete, wanting to grow through your game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have that learner's mindset, and especially in therapy. I mean, you just graduated, right? Where so many things personally can overlap. So I might feel stuck with a case and I present it in consultation. I'm like, I'm feeling really stuck with this thing. And then one of my friends will say like, well, have you thought about it like this? And I'll be like, oh, duh, right? Like we have these kind of mental, like it's called countertransference, right? Where something personally provides a block to my own clinical knowledge. So consultation is absolutely pinnacle. I think every therapist should be in their own therapy, maybe not every week, but you need to be brushing up in your own therapy. And I think there are risks to working with people that don't have those outlets.
Yeah. And with that being said, Rachel, I wonder, how does a individual kind of pick a therapist? Like if they're watching this video, they're watching this podcast episode, and they're like on the fence about whether to start, like is there maybe some criteria to look for, like any guidance that you're willing to offer them?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke earlier in the episode about working with people that are experienced. That's a personal bias, because I know some of the mistakes that I made early in my career are, things I can reflect on now and be like, thank God I had great supervision. So I think working with someone that is credentialed for the type of treatment that you are seeking is really important. I also think that during a consult, someone that's going to be transparent about what their skill level is, transparent about what their scope of practice is, and assessing for level of care is really important. Because ultimately, when clients are coming in for a consult, they aren't the ones trained clinically, right? They aren't the ones that have the information about like, what kind of treatment do I need, right? So, looking for providers that have that kind of open transparency, that they would be able to say no if it wasn't a match, for example.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely resonate with that. Transparency definitely is key, and getting credentialed, because as you said, there are some risks to doing some of the work even that you do, right? Like going too quickly, or not assessing properly, right? So somebody's like, yeah, I can try. I took a webinar on it. Like maybe not. So I definitely appreciate that. Last question for you, Rachel, and then we'll wrap this up. If you wanted listeners to kind of take away one thing from our conversation today, what would that be?
Let me think about that. What I would highlight for listeners is that anything can be pathologized, right? Any kind of symptom. But I would encourage you to start to think about your symptoms as, helpful responses. It is doing something. So even if you don't know what that job is just yet, starting to think about it. All right, the nail biting is frustrating and it's doing something. I think that starting to think in that way can be useful to kind of curate some of that curiosity that we had touched on earlier, as opposed to the pathology of, you're depressed, take this medication, you're going to feel like this forever, right? That it's actually doing something for you and accessing some of that curiosity.
Oh, so good, Rachel. So good. Rachel, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being on the show with us. We really appreciate your time, and maybe we can do it again in the future.
Yeah, sounds great, Rich. Thank you.
All right, ma'am. I will talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Bye.